Hello, thank you all for coming this morning. It's great to see all of you here. My name is Lillian Perez. I'm the Grants and Program Associate at Arts Mid-Hudson, and I'm here to tell you about the Ulster County Service and Promotion Fund. You'll probably have noticed me setting up that camera in the back, so we're recording this for the people that couldn't make it today. If you hear me repeat a question, if I'm worried that maybe the camera didn't pick it up or something like that, that's why I'm doing that. Or if you hear me overly projecting, it's because I'm worried the camera doesn't hear me. So that's what we're doing with that. So everybody get all the materials, the surveys, good. And if you have any questions about anything, again, I'm going to stay afterwards. We'll hold any questions that are very specific to your project until you can speak to me once the info session is over. But if you have a general question that might apply to more than one person in the room, feel free to stop me at any point during the info session and get clarification, okay? So, again, we're here to, actually, before I start, I want to do this morning. There's not that many of us here, so I think it might be beneficial if everyone just gives a quick introduction of who you are. And I want to do this to facilitate any kind of networking. If there's someone in the room you don't know or someone that you might be able to partner with, it's good to have an idea of who all the players in the county are. And this program really encourages partnerships between more than one organization, so that's another reason why it's important. So let's start. Do you mind starting?
No, no.
Just a really quick intro, no pressure.
Tom Nolan, I'm a member of Bruce Studios and Gallery right up on Main Street. Is that brief enough?
That's perfect. That's perfect. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Valerie Sharp. I do grant writing for Grace Exhibition Space, which is a performance art space in New York City that also has a residency and an outdoor performance space in Rosendale in Kingston.
Shauna Cantor, Voice Theater, Woodstock.
Next. Yeah. Hi, everybody. Terry Lavoie, Haitian People Support Project, but I'm here in the capacity as a sponsor of Michael Monasterio and passing the torch through the arts. We've just been awarded a great grant for a Nina Simone production. Anyway, so we're here to learn about other possibilities and network and all of that good stuff.
Good morning. My name is Jing Shuai. I'm a member of Bruce Studio. I teach Tai Chi there. That's it.
Hi, I'm Doreen Tunnell. I am Director of Programming at the Woodstock Redcliffe Guild.
I'm Mary Lou Stapleton, and I am the president of the Big Indian Native American Cultural Center. We do Native American events, powwows, and festivals in the Indian area.
I'm Marcia McManigal, and I'm a trustee for the Town of Esopus Library.
Steve Leiber from Upstate Films in Woodstock.
Hi, Jeff Miller from the Weir Center for Immigrant Culture and History.
I'm Crystal Way. I'm Executive Director of Mount Trumper Arts, which is an arts residency center for performing arts at the Mount Trumper.
Eileen McAdam with Sound and Story. We collect the stories of everyday people in the Hudson Valley and do audio productions and put them out there in all sorts of different ways.
My name is Jake Salp. I'm the Director of Programs and Services at the Hudson Valley LGBTQ Center.
And there's one more coming in, but maybe we'll... Who are you?
I'm Brendan Burr from Shadow Landscapes.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, thank you, everyone. All right, so now we'll get into talking about the program. And if you want to talk to each other afterwards or talk to me again, more than welcome to. So, Ulster County Service and Promotion Fund. This is funding set aside by the Ulster County Legislature to support arts organizations and arts programming in Ulster County. So this is made available by the legislature. We just got our funding approved. We got an increase this year, which we're all really happy about. So we're going to be able to give out more funding this year than we were able to give out last year. So that's really, really exciting. And that's part, our executive director, Linda Marston-Reed, she goes and advocates on the behalf of all arts organizations in the county to get more funding and to tell them about the great programs that you're doing. So just a little note to always, thank your representatives for giving us this funding and for supporting the arts, because that's how we encourage, they hear about these programs and are encouraged to give more funding. So we've been administering this funding since its inception in 2008. And so again, also thank you to the legislature and thank you to the library here, LT Memorial Library, for hosting us, being really helpful this morning, opening early for us, which was really, really nice, so it's awesome. You guys all got the resources. If anyone didn't get a survey, please grab one for me at the end and just give me your thoughts about what you thought about today. So what we're going to be going over is a little bit of background about this program, what the guidelines say, and actually, if you'll excuse me, I'm going to grab a copy of the guidelines so I can point to where things are and tell you, where to find them for yourself. So you got a copy of the guidelines, a copy of the application. There are 2 different budget forms. You'll only need to use one, but both are provided to you. They're for 2 different categories of funding within this program, which we'll go over in great detail in a few minutes. And some stuff about if you're serving as a fiscal sponsor, there's a sponsorship letter up there, some other resources about grant writing as well. We'll talk about eligibility, who's eligible to apply, what programs are eligible to apply. We'll talk about the 2 main categories of funding, which within this fund, which is capacity building and programmatic support. So you can only apply to one of those areas when you're applying, and it's really important that you be very clear in your application if you're applying for capacity building or programmatic support. And we'll talk about all that. The priorities for funding, we'll go over the review process, we'll go over any tips about filling out your application and how the application works, and any other tips and resources, and then question and answer, as I said. Okay, established in 2008, made available by Ulster County Legislature. We do the same panel process for this program that we do for our Dutchess County funding and the decentralization grant program, which many of you are familiar with. So it's the same process, but a different funding that's being made available. Okay, so the goals of this program. The Ulster County Legislature, when awarding this funding to us to administer across the county, they're really looking for ways to support arts organizations in a lasting way. So that's why for this fund, 70% of the funding that we have is for capacity building requests. It's for requests that, new initiatives that are going to expand what you're able to do at your organization, make your organization stronger, and by extension, increase arts programming available to the general population. So the organizations are stronger, then there's more stuff going on for the general public to enjoy. We also give out funding for programmatic support, and this is again due to advocacy that we're hearing from applicants and fundees that they really just needed funding. Some organizations really just need funding to do the great programs they're doing year after year. So that's why 30% of this programming is for programmatic support. It is, however, not a funding priority, so the ones that are for capacity building get priority. Unless it is a very, outstanding project, it's something that's a really, really strong application, the priority might not be as much of a concern. Hello, welcome. Okay. And then another funding priority is strategic partnerships. So for this fund, we like to encourage arts organizations to work together, to partner up, and come up with a joint effort that can benefit both organizations or all 3 organizations, whatever it might be. This might be like a cross-marketing campaign, that's one example. I'll talk about it more as we go on, but that is something that gets priority, and those are also eligible for the higher amount of funding that we can give out. So if you're in a strategic partnership, you're more likely to get funding and you're more likely to get more funding. Okay, so then again, it's looking to improve Ulster County's overall economy and quality of life by supporting arts organizations. And there are a lot, you might know our grants and funding manager, Merritt Minnemeyer. So she's somebody else who you can reach out to for questions about this program. And her and I share a love of PowerPoint slide transitions. So there are a few silly ones in here. So just to lighten the mood a little bit. I hope you enjoy them. Okay, so main points to consider. The deadline is April 13th, a Friday at midnight. So it actually closes at 11:59. Hopefully you're not doing it that late, but that is when the system automatically closes down. You won't be able to spend anything else. The application's available now. You get grant notification in late May, and activities that are funded through this program must occur from June 1st, 2018 to June 30th, 2019. So it's pretty much half of 2018 and half of 2019, even though we call it 2018 funding. That's just the way that the system is set up with the legislature. I'm sorry, I misspoke. Okay. Yes, what's on here is correct. July 1st, 2018 to June 30th, 2019. Okay? So at least some of it, though, has to be occurring in 2018. So even if that's just like the planning, preliminary stages, something has to be moving in 2018. The funding range is $2,500 to $9,500. Again, the applications that are coming in for in a strategic partnership are eligible for that higher amount of funding, and that's for capacity building. $1,000 to $4,000 for programmatic support. Okay? Any questions about those dates or numbers or anything? Okay. So now we'll talk about who can apply. So again, the main focus is on nonprofit arts organizations. So any nonprofit that is either through its programming or through its mission, addressing, having the arts as a main primary focus of their mission or programming. So there are some organizations that might not technically be a strictly arts organization, but they would still be eligible to apply if they're doing consistent programming that has arts as its main focus. So, yeah, sure.
So, how do you define arts? Because I've applied a couple of times under sound and story. I consider different types of audio productions and exhibit art, but I'm not sure you folks do. So I'm just a sense, I mean, do you consider that kind of work arts or not?
I can't speak for everybody who sits on our panel. So we have a review panel which we pull individuals from different arts organizations or those who haven't applied really, and also stakeholders in the community. So I can't speak for everyone. I mean, there's always a variety of opinions. I could say personally, I would consider that art. We consider art to be any expressive art form, visual or performative. Yes, expressive art form is the wording that we use.
Okay.
And we also get that wording from the New York State Council on the Arts, so that's kind of what we go off of.
Yeah.
I would encourage you and anyone, if you have applied for funding in the past and did not receive funding through this or any of our programs, please call us, even if you did get funding. Please call us and we'll tell you what the panel had to say about your application and give you the note. So that might not have even been the reason,
right.
That if you did or didn't get funding. So please, we're happy to make an appointment and tell you what the panel had to say. And a lot of the time, the panel has very specific recommendations for your application that we can't put in your notification letter as a stipulation or as anything like that. But those notes and little bits of inspiration really are sitting in our panel notes and waiting for you guys to ask for them. We can give it to you. Okay, so does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
Great. Okay, so again, any nonprofit arts organization, arts is the main focus of their programming or their mission. The arts organization or program should be doing at least 3 years of programming in this region, hopefully arts programming. And this is because we're looking to help arts organizations that are already pretty much established. This isn't really seed funding for a new organization. This is helping to maintain our existing institutions. Based in or primarily serving Ulster County, and a nonprofit organization may serve as a fiscal sponsor for a program or unincorporated group that has the arts as its main focus. Okay, so all organizations, regardless of whether they're applying as direct applicants, if they are a partner on another application with one organization, or if they're serving as a fiscal sponsor, all nonprofits have to meet the same eligibility criteria, should be meeting best practices, and for that I would direct you to the Nonprofit Revitalization Act, which you can read about online or come to us for additional resources on that. Should be conducting all activities in a way that does not discriminate on the basis of gender identity, gender, race, class, all of these descriptors listed here, and should have a board of directors that meets regularly, and that's all provided to us in your application. You'll provide a board list and some basic information about your board. Those who are not eligible to apply, individuals who are applying on their own. For individuals, really the best way to get in on this funding is to either partner with an arts organization and be on there, or be hired by an arts organization to perform some kind of service, maybe through programming, or if an individual is trying to expand, say they're a volunteer at an organization, they're trying to expand their position, maybe get paid for some of their time working for that organization, they could, that organization could apply for like a new staff person, you know. So those are some ways that individuals can get in on this, but individuals cannot apply on their own. Schools, school systems, colleges, university departments, or their supporting foundations cannot apply for this funding because they're already receiving funding from the county. Units of government for the same reason, and groups or organizations that have not submitted final reports to Arts Mid-Hudson. So if we don't have final reports, then those applicants or organizations are ineligible for a year. That's where it is right now for all of our programs. Oh, and you know, I skipped something. Libraries and social service organizations are not eligible for this funding. They can serve as a location for an event. You know, that might be a way to be involved. You know, if they want to partner with an organization to do some kind of program or something that's going to expand their capacity, that would be allowed, but they cannot apply on their own or be the lead applicant on a strategic collaboration. Okay, funded activity. Everybody doing okay? We're good? Okay. Funded activities will address one or more of the following. So I'm sorry if I'm looking back and forth. It's a lot of information. I want to make sure I get it all exactly right. So focus on building organizational capacity. So again, that's a priority, something that's going to advance your mission or advance what you're able to offer to the general population. Provide increased access to arts programming. So that's always one of our goals, is to give more access to individuals who might not have access to the arts or have access to a particular art form of art. So you could argue that you know, this community is being underserved by performance art, or you know, being underserved by theater. You know, those would also be areas where the community would be underserved. Or if an artist, they are an underrepresented group and their voice is not being heard in you know, as frequently as it should be in, you know, the arts community. And it's also good if it's going to help you leverage other funds for your organization. Say you have a matching grant or something, this funding could be used for that as well. And generally applying to Arts Mid-Hudson and receiving funding is something that improves your track record to other funders. So it's always a bonus applying to us because it's a very accessible grant. We give a lot of technical assistance, and then you can work on your proposals and get them really strong, and then go to other funders with those same proposals that you submit to us. Okay, so for all of our programming, the arts, for all of our funded programming and capacity building initiatives, the arts should be the main focus. So we're an arts organization. This funding is specifically set aside for the arts. There are certain types of, this is where I'll point to the guidelines. There are some things that are ineligible for funding, and I would direct you to, let's see, page 2 at the bottom. There's a list, and I'm going to go over a couple of them here, but not all of them. But when you're doing your application, even when you know, after you complete your whole application or while you're halfway through, I encourage people to read this again, because a lot of the time you forget, you know, that something might not be a fundable expense or might be something that's not eligible for funding in some other way. So the last thing we want you to do is submit something and then we get to the panel and say this just isn't eligible. So just check this several times during the process. So anything that's closed to the general public is not eligible. Fundraising events, so funding, we can't give you funding to raise more money for your organization. That's not exactly what it's for. It's to build capacity or do programming. Anything that is considered social service or therapeutic in nature, and so the main focus should be the arts, not using the arts to heal or the arts to whatever it might be. It should be the arts as the main focus and supporting working artists and arts organizations. Mm-hmm. And then I'll direct you on page 3, the top of the page, these are expenses that cannot be funded. When you're doing your budget, make sure you read through this and be really clear about it. Because what will happen is if there's a line item on your budget that is not fundable, we will deduct that basically from your ask. So that, and then that will become the maximum that we can give you. So if you had your budget, you were asking for $1,000 and $200 of that was for food, we would not be able to give you, we would only be able to give you $800, right? And so if you're also at the bottom of the funding and that ask goes below the minimum amount we can give you, we won't be able to fund you at all, right? Okay. So, can't be startup or seed funding for a new organization. We cannot fund the commission of new work or the acquisition of art. We cannot fund parades, fairs, circuses, comedians or stand-up comedy, culinary arts, martial arts, or healing arts. Woo. And actually, I'll point out a couple more over here. I don't want to do that transition again, so I'll just read from it. The one that we say over and over is no balloons, clowns, magic. I mean, that's kind of a silly one, but we've gotten applications before that were literally entirely for balloons, you know? So it's really, you have to be, you know, just make sure you're paying attention to this list. A big one too is food. We cannot fund food. We cannot fund murals, permanent public murals, or any kind of art that's going to be permanent, because we cannot fund capital improvements to buildings or land. Okay, 2 types of funding, again, capacity building and programmatic support. 70% for capacity building, 30% for programmatic, and the programmatic support shouldn't be for new initiatives. It should be for existing initiatives that need funding to continue going. If you're trying to do a new initiative that's a programmatic new initiative, that would really be under capacity building, and we'll talk about that. There's such a thing as programmatic capacity building, and this is a way for you to apply for more funding if you're doing a new program that's really going to expand what you can do as an organization, and I'll give you some examples of that when we get there. So, capacity building examples. Administrative or programmatic, so these are like the most common we see. Upgrades for technology or equipment. A couple of years ago, we funded CCE to be able to buy new computers and drum sets. So that's the kind of concrete technology or equipment that they needed to be able to serve more students at once. New or expanded staff positions. So this is another one we see a lot of requests for. If you're trying to hire a new part-time admin person or an assistant to the executive director or a new program director or whatever it might be, that's where you would apply under here. There are some considerations with that we'll talk about in a few. If you're trying to do a new program or a new project or an expansion of some kind, you need to hire a consultant. That's another allowable ask. They might be doing board development or strategic planning. Those things would all be allowable under this fund. Initiative that enhance current programming in a significant way. So if you need to buy new, you need to get track lighting for a space so that you can start using it as a more serious gallery space. That could be something that would be, say you're already showing work in a room, but you really need to enhance the space so that you can get bigger names there to show their work. That would be an expansion of an existing program. Okay. Capacity building again. We'll keep going with some more examples. Audience development, so these would be new marketing initiatives, or again, some kind of cross-promotion with another organization. That could be a really great area to do a strategic partnership and apply together. Strategic partnerships. Marketing strategies, so, and I'll give a really good example of this in a few minutes actually, so I'll skip it for now. Shared marketing plans, I've talked about that, and any other activities that are going to increase accessibility or the ability for the general public to participate in the arts. So these would be expanding your capacity because it's expanding your audience, it's giving more people access. Programmatic support, so these can be what you would expect, festivals, performances, exhibits, any kind of programming that an arts organization might be doing, and should be regular. They could be part of your regular scheduled activities. It could be like you're applying for your exhibition series, or you're applying for your marketing for your series of music performances, whatever it might be, or it could be one big event that you do once a year. So, example, we funded this. This is where we give out funding for Dutchess County as well. It's kind of a different fund, but it's programming. It's strictly programming for Dutchess County, and it has to do with tourism. But one thing that would be an example that could cross over is we funded the Hudson Valley Jazz Festival in Poughkeepsie. So that's a one-time event. That's kind of their big event that they do every year. We funded that consistently in Dutchess County, and if that were taking place here, that would be the kind of thing that you could apply for as well. Okay, and we've talked about that, so I'll skip it. Funding priorities, as I said, the capacity building, anything that's going to have a long-term impact on the organization or the ability of residents in Ulster County to experience arts. We've already talked about this, I think. It's really just something that's going to strengthen you and give you more ability to do more. And let's see if I skipped anything there. Okay. I'm going to skip this as well because we've talked about it. Okay. I'm going to skip this too because we've talked about it. Because I add to it and then I realize that I put it on a slide somewhere else. Okay, so if you've received funding in the past, may you still apply? The answer is yes, of course you can still apply. You're not guaranteed funding year after year. It's a new game every year. It's a new group of panelists. It's a new pool of applicants. So you might see a really big grant one year because we had, let's say, less really strong applications. So you happen to be in a pool that you were able to get a lot more funding. And the next year you might see a reduction in funding because we had, 25 really strong applications. So it all depends on the pool of applicants. Okay. I'll talk about this now, and then we'll jump a little bit to the panel process, and then we'll take a step back and talk about some specific examples about programs you can apply for, or initiatives you can apply for. So what we do is we get a group of panelists together, and they get access to all of the applications beforehand. They read through them all really thoroughly. They take their own personal notes, and then we come together in a panel meeting and we discuss each application for about 15 to 25 minutes, depending on how the discussion is going. There's usually one person who is the primary reader. They read they're the ones that they've been assigned to be the primary reader on really closely, and they present that to the rest of the group. Then at the end, we do a yes or no vote. If funding, also a key point, we don't tell them how much money we have to start out because we want them to be unbiased in their voting. So we ask if we had unlimited funding, would you vote yes to fund this project? Is it stand on its merit alone that it's worth funding? So then if it gets a majority yes, it moves on to the next round. And then at the end, we look at all the ones that got majority yes, and we start making funding decisions at that point. After that, it goes to our allocations committee, which is a smaller committee of members of our board who look through all of the decisions the panel has recommended, all the funding that the panel has recommended, and then they move it on to our board for final approval. This is the same process that the New York State Council on the Arts uses, so we kind of mirror ours after theirs. They're going to be looking at artistic quality and merit. These are evaluative criteria. So that's first and foremost is the organization of strong artistic merit. Are they doing programming that has strong merit? Or the artist involved, accomplished artist, that kind of thing. And then the impact that of the institution or of the program on the general public in Ulster County. The need for this, so if you're trying to do a new initiative, say you were going to do, a mural festival, you were applying to do a mural festival in Kingston, and you were a different organization, we would say, there's no community need for this is already happening, O Positive is doing this, right? So being aware of other things that are going on in the region, and what are the gaps that you can fill in and expand into so that you're offering new and exciting things. Then the strength of the application, planning and evaluation. So it's not as much a criteria, there might be some errors in your application here or there. I mean, depending on how serious the errors are, it could work against you. But we do ask the panelists, a lot of the time, people who are writing these applications are volunteers. They might not have written a grant before. So we like to encourage everyone to apply. What might work against you is if it's unclear. So as long as we can understand what you're trying to say, this won't hurt you when we're evaluating the proposals, if it's, the strength of the overall application. But if we can't understand what something means, or if there's conflicting information and say the narrative says one thing and the budget says a different thing, that's going to create a problem where we're trying to figure out what you meant, and then that hurts your score. And then other financial or in-kind support. So if you already have funding going into the project, that's a major bonus because it shows that it's more likely to happen, it's more feasible, that if you get less funding, you're going to be able to make it up somewhere else and continue the project. So that's something we look at as well. Any questions so far? Okay. How much money can you request? Big question. So, as I said before, capacity building is $2,500 to $9,500. Programmatic support is $1,000 to $4,000. And I've said all of this, that those that are in strategic partnerships can apply for more funding and will be more likely to get more funding. We have approximately $50,000 to distribute. And the average grant that we see is usually about $4,000 for capacity building.
What's your average
Average program building?
I'm sorry?
The average grant for the program?
I don't know the exact number, but I would guess about $2,000. Yes, please.
So can you apply for both capacity building and programmatic?
No.
Okay,
You gotta pick one.
okay.
It's on the application like as a radio list where you can only select one of the one bullet point basically. And one thing that kind of comes up in a lot of these applications is, say someone's applied for capacity building, they've indicated that on their application, they are applying for $9,500 or $8,500. And really, as you read the application, it's very clear that it's just programmatic support, it's not capacity building. If that's the case, even though you checked capacity building, we can only fund the max for programmatic support. So, sure.
I guess just refining the two categories. If one is applying for new programming, because programmatic support doesn't cover new initiatives, any new programming is considered capacity building.
Yes, but I would speak to us.
Okay.
I would just talk to us about it and make sure that you're applying in the right category. But I would say generally yes, because it would be, if it's a new initiative, it's hopefully expanding your capacity in some way. Any other questions right now? All right, so I'll show you some historical data. So these taller columns are always how much we got requested. So how much in total we added up all the requests, how much money we were being asked for. This is how much funding we have, right? So that's why everybody usually sees a reduction in what they asked for. It's very rare that we give out a full grant, fully what you asked for. It does happen, but it's rare. It would have to be a really outstanding application. So these are over the years. As you'll see, the funding has gradually kind of gone up that we've gotten from the legislature, which is great. But it hovers around, triple what we have. And then these are the number of applications and the numbers funded. So you'll see roughly half of the applications get funded. And a lot of the time, applications that don't get funded, I would say at least 4 or 5 of them have some kind of major eligibility issue. So I would encourage you, if you are really, really clear that, you've read these guidelines backwards and forwards and you know that your project is totally eligible, you've worked with us on technical assistance, you're already doing, you're already more likely to get funded because, there are always going to be some that get submitted that are ineligible. There are always going to be, organizations or applicants that never speak to us before they apply and don't realize what they're doing isn't eligible for funding. So if you just are communicative with us and make sure you're really clear on these things, then you're already in better shape than most. Okay. So, strong proposals. Understand the goals, as I just said, follow the guidelines, address program priorities. So if you're reading, it's perfectly fine to say in your application, this addresses your priority, this is your specific priority here, and refer back to what the guidelines say and what our priorities are. Makes sense for the applicant organization, so it's doing something that isn't something completely out of left field that they have no experience with. It's something that's a logical next step in building the organization's capacity. Proofread, obviously, and the budget and narrative need to match. So I touched on this before. If there's some kind of really clear contradiction, say, in the application, you said there were going to be 5 artists involved and each was getting $100 stipend. And then we go to the budget and it says artist fees $700. Then we're going to be where's that extra $200 going? What does that mean? Are they all getting paid the same amount? So be really clear about all of those things and making sure they match. Okay. So now this is taking a step back to some specific kinds of applications that we see. So a lot of the time we see applications come in for technological upgrades or equipment upgrades. So you're going to want to consider, is this something that's customized for your organization? Are you pulling in a consultant to build something very specific for your space? So an example of that would be last year we funded Center for Photography at Woodstock. to build a darkroom, or to upgrade their existing darkroom, and they hired a consultant to come in, and it was very customized to their needs and their users' needs and all of that. Off the shelf would mean we just need to buy this program so that we can upgrade our donor system, right? So that would be enough. Those are the considerations you want to be sure are clear in your submission, that you know what you're going after. Another example of this would be last year we funded the Rosendale Theater to get sound equipment. So there was like microphones, speakers, lavalier mics, like all those kinds of things. And they literally attached a list of every single item they were going to buy, where they were going to buy it from, how much it cost on the website. And so everybody said, we know exactly where this money is going. They indicated which ones would not get purchased if they got less funding. So it was really, really clear, and that was a really successful application. Showing that you have the capacity to use and maintain this equipment or technology. So who's the staff person that's going to be working on it? Give us their resume. Tell us, if you're hiring a consultant to work with it, how long are they going to be there? If you're hiring somebody as a temporary admin person, what's the plan for once the funding runs out? All of those things, make sure they're really clear. And then the benefit to the organization, the audience, what's the benefit of buying this equipment? Is it going to benefit the larger community and your ability to serve the larger community? Staff positions, why now? That's a question that gets asked a lot on the panel. Why is it important to hire this new person now? What are they going to be bringing to the table that's going to expand what you're doing? What will they accomplish? Again, what's the plan for once the funding runs out? And is it a self-sustaining, how will it become sustainable after the year is over, the funding period is over? Okay, so now we'll talk about this program-based capacity building. So these are any kind of projects that are going to expand what you're able to do. I'll give an example right away of a really successful one that we had. And I'll say too that we see less of these come in, and I think they kind of pique the panel's interest when they do come in. Arm of the Sea applied and received funding for to rehearse and finalize a new production, which they call Dirt, and that had to do with ecological and environmental themes. So it was a new production for them, and they were able to bring it to a new audience. So they were bringing it to schools, they were bringing it to environmental fairs and festivals, and so they didn't have something like that in, a show like that they could bring to those audiences. So when they created this new show, it provided more opportunity for them and more places for them to share what they were doing. They also then applied, or the Newburgh Community Land Bank applied to us last year. So we funded that project in 2016. In 2017, the Newburgh Community Land Bank applied to us and received funding to hire Arm of the Sea to do that, to perform Dirt at their urban farming festival. So that's like showing how that did expand their capacity, because then they got hired by this other organization and got more funding from us. So it's those kind of programs that are going to go on and have a life of their own and really reach new people. How will you build the audience for future growth? Consider that and make sure that's in your marketing plan and in your the question that asks who is your intended audience. And this kind of thing will allow you to test out something new that you might not have had the freedom to test out if you're working within, trying to keep your existing programs going and all of your funding is going to keeping your really strong existing programs going. This is a good way to try out something new. Okay.
Could you just clarify when you say these are not project?
Yeah, I saw that as a flip by and I thought maybe I should, okay. So these are not project grants, meaning we give out, the decentralization grant program, we give out project grants. And those are, it's just a different thing. And we put that there really because a lot of people are familiar with that program and think that it works exactly the same way, but this is for, the main difference is project grants, an individual could apply and have more of the direction in those, like an individual could apply with a library to do a workshop series. That would be a project grant, it would be a one-time smaller project. This is for something that is a new initiative and it's something that's expanding the capacity of an organization. So it's just a different thing. It's more about the organization looking at their own programming and finding something new.
How about the program part of this grant? Can those be projects? Or are you looking for something different?
Um,
The 30% that you say goes for programming, is programming and project the same, or do you see a difference there too?
that would be closer to it, but again, those are not for new projects. So the
Okay.
program support in this fund is not for a new project, it's for existing programming that you need funding to sustain.
Okay,
Project grants could be for, and usually are for an entirely new project.
gotcha, thank you.
So, yeah, I'm sorry if that point on the slideshow is a little unclear, but it's really just to differentiate our decentralization program from this program, because they are quite different. Marketing and outreach initiatives, so be thoughtful, research-based, and realistic. So we see a lot of applications come in, or marketing plans come in, and, you know, the panel, you know, reads through, say, your budget and says, oh, they pay really close attention to the numbers you assign to what things are gonna cost, basically. So do research. A good example of that is the Rosendale Theater, who put every single item they were gonna buy and was really clear about how much that was gonna cost. The same goes for marketing. So say we're doing this ad at WA, you know, a lot of the time we see a list. We're gonna post on all the community boards, or community calendars. We're gonna advertise in Chronogram and WAMC. We're gonna post flyers and, you know, such and such. So then, you know, think about what are those costs real, you know, do your research about what those things are really gonna cost, and don't just put in, you know, all of those things in a line item and then put $1,000. Because they're gonna wonder, what's the breakdown of that? Is that really what's gonna cost? You know, we've seen applications come in where it'll say, you know, a tent, $29, like an outdoor big tent, and you know, that's exactly what the panel does. Everybody laughs and says, there's no way this is what it's really gonna cost. So pay really close attention to that stuff, because the panel is. Easy to throw money at a marketing proposal is kind of the example I just gave. You know, we see, and you'll see on your budget, most of you I hope grabbed the budget form. We work it out, so we set it up so that there is a category on the right side, an explanation column in the middle, and then a cost on the left side. So we're asking you in the explanation column to say exactly what you mean by that, and then give us a cost. So for marketing, it would be really easy to just say, you know, flyers, print, online, radio advertising, $1,000. You probably don't have room in that explanation line to give a full breakdown, so we encourage you to use the budget notes at the bottom, or to just attach a separate document with a breakdown. Is that clear? And again, clearly explain your reasoning, you know, why you want to use those things. Relate your marketing plan back to your intended audience. You know, show awareness that these marketing strategies are actually going to reach the people you're hoping they're going to reach. And if you need any assistance on looking, if you want us to look over your marketing plan, we're more than happy to read a draft of it and give you feedback. Okay. Collaborations. So these are shared marketing this could be a shared marketing campaign. This is a really common example that we use, because these are the ones that we usually see come in. We find it very, you know, if a group of organizations can apply together, a really good way to do that would be a shared marketing campaign. Maybe it's one really major arts organization working with two smaller organizations, and it's going to, you know, increase visibility for the smaller organizations, and also, you know, create new partnerships for that larger organization. So these might include arts organizations, businesses, or individual artists. They don't all have to be arts organizations, and I'll give a really good example of this in a second. And focus on how you're going to build the audience, what the community need is for this kind of thing. And as I said, it could be an audience builder for one organization is assisting in audience building for another organization. So the example that we use often was a partnership between Women's Studio Workshop, Center for Photography at Woodstock, and R&F Paints. R&F Paints is a for-profit business. So they were not the lead applicant, but they were a partner on this. And the initiative was Make Art Here. And they had these signs printed, they put them in their windows, and it was a shared marketing campaign to show spaces where people could come in and make work and use studio space to create things. So CPW has a computer lab and a dark room. Women's Studio Workshop has, you know, several studio spaces, and R&F obviously has their acoustics studio. So this was a shared marketing plan. It was really successful, and we really haven't seen many applications like this come in since. We've been using this example for a couple of years now, because we just haven't seen anything else come in. So we're eager for more things like this to come in, because again, you'll be eligible for more funding.
Mm-hmm.
Programmatic support, I think we talked talked about all of this, and I'm going to skip it. So, one thing we ask everyone to always consider, this is, county taxpayer money. It's made available by the Ulster County Legislature, so we're always asking applicants to ask themselves, is this a sound use of public funds? Is this something that you'd want to tell your neighbor you got $1,000 to do this project on? So, always keep that in mind, and if you have questions on that, reach out to us. Okay, so we just went over all of that. We're getting close to the end. Now we're going to talk about the application process. Anyone have any questions about eligibility, the different categories, the priorities, anything like that? Yeah, you.
Oh, me, hi. A question about one of the things that it says is not eligible for funding, and that was juror fees and stipends. A little confusing, and then for you, in one of your examples, you described artists' fees as a possible line on a budget. So I guess my question is, what is the line between what kind of fees you do fund and what you don't? We're doing a professional development series where we'd like to be able to pay speaker fees, or speaker fees something that you would.
Speaker fees will be fine. It's specifically juror fees that we cannot fund. And that's a guidance that we follow from the New York State Council on the Arts, based on their decentralization program, things that we're not allowed to fund through that program. And it's really because we're trying to give money to artists, and we don't want all the funding to go to one juror who's then, all of the artists are paying $50 to be juried, that kind of thing. So we're really trying to fund working artists in our county.
Can you get MISCA funding and this?
Yes, that's a great question. You can apply for this funding and funding, thank you for coming, and funding from the New York State Council on the Arts. They do not overlap in any way.
So for the overall budget, can you put things in the budget that aren't eligible for funding, but not ask for funding?
Yes, that's a great question. I'll talk about it at the end when we get to the budget. But you'll see on your budget form, there's a line that says expenses. There's a column that says expenses. There's a column to the right of that says grant funds to pay for. So if there's any cost going into your project, make sure it appears on your budget in some way, because you want to show the panel you're aware of that cost. But like for food, so say there was a line item for food, it would appear in the expenses, but it should, when it gets right next to it to grant funds to pay for, it should appear as zero, because we can't fund that. And we'll talk about that more in a second. Okay, so all of our applications come in through submittable.com. It's an online system. They prompt you to create an account, and then any of your drafts will be saved to your account. Any applications you've submitted elsewhere should be saved there as well. If you have any questions about, any technical difficulties with Submittable, we encourage you to reach out to them for technical assistance, because they have really good assistance and they are more knowledgeable about their systems than we are. We use their system. We can help with some things if things are unclear on the application or, general stuff. But if you're like, I can't get into my account, we have no access to that.
And they're amazing. I mean, they get back to you within a matter of a split second. You send them an email and they're right there.
They really do.
Yeah.
Easy to use, they have great technical support, save the draft, you can print it afterwards from Submittable, and you'll upload all files to Submittable, so the budget, any supplementals, your board list, all of those things, they don't get emailed to us, they all get uploaded to your application. This is our website, so when you're looking for information on this program or any of our funding programs, you're going to this menu on the left side, and then there's, you probably can't read it in the back, but it says opportunities in the arts. That's where you're going to click to expand, and then it's going to say grants and funding. So you'll click on that, it's going to take you to this page, and you're looking for Ulster County funds. It's one of these blue toggles, and when you click on this little circle, it expands it, and you can see information about the program, downloads of the guideline, all the resources that I gave you here and more, and links to the application. You can also find our application at artsmidhudson.submittable.com/submit, and I think that link is somewhere listed in the guidelines, so any of our open applications are listed there. So any calls for artists that we have, those all go there as well. So again, this is what it's going to look like when you expand that, and then these are all links to download or links to the application. When you get there, this is what it's going to look like. It's going to ask you to log in, and you're going to click on this category. You're looking for the 2018 Ulster County Services and Promotion Fund, the Cultural Service and Promotion Fund, and you're going to click Submit. Then you'll see some more information. There's some more links here, the same downloads. We put them all over the place so that you can't miss them. And if you're not already logged in, when you get to this page, it's going to prompt you to do so underneath all the information about the fund. Okay. And if anyone has any questions about finding all that stuff, just email me and I'll send you it directly. Okay, so your application. So these are some general tips. There's a really good resource back there called Grant Writing Basics that we hand out all of our things because it just has some really simple, clear points about ways to improve your grant writing skills. One of the main things is to use simple, clear language. A lot of the time, there's one of the main questions that we ask on the application is your general activities, your general, information about your general program. It's basically the longest question you're going to answer. And I always encourage people to write, we are requesting this amount of money for this program, which will take place here. It will involve these players, be really clear about exactly what you're doing right at the beginning, so there's no question about what you're asking funding for or what the program or new initiative is. And I say that because sometimes we get those questions answered in a way where it's like, well, we opened in 1985 and we've been doing this since, we get all this history about the organization and we're like, we need to know what you're asking us for money. We need to know what that money's going towards, and we need to know in a really clear way. So there's, little confusion. So answer the questions directly. Give enough specifics. So be specific. If you're talking about your marketing plan, be specific about where you're going to advertise. How many flyers are you going to print out? Where are you thinking of putting them? Enough specifics that are really critical to the project. And if you have questions about that, again, please send us drafts of your application, and we're happy to read them and send them back with notes. Relate to the evaluative criteria and the funding priorities. Oh, I'll show that. Show evidence of artistic value, planning, and need and impact. So, all that you're trying to prove to us that there is, a need for it, that the planning is in place, that the project is feasible, that's going to happen, and that the program or organization is of high artistic quality. These are all the things that are going to be included in your submission. We're going to ask you to give the submission a title. This is just for us to have some, be able to see things a little bit more easily and keep track of the applications. You're going to pick if it's capacity building or programmatic. You're going to tell us how much you're requesting. Give us a one-sentence description. There's a timeline. Basically, it's just a list form of, in July we're going to do this. In August we're going to do this. Planning meeting. Then we're going to start getting together our marketing materials, whatever it might be, leading up to, whatever major dates are associated with your program or new initiative. You're going to give us the goals for the project, so you talk about whatever what you're trying to do with this new initiative or new program. Tell us your numbers served, so generally what the numbers served are by your organization annually, and how many you hope to serve through this program, or by expanding what you're doing in some way. And then talk about how it will be supported by the organization. So these are some things we touched on earlier. Who are the key players involved? Is there any funding coming in from the organization? And how are you going to market what you're doing? Okay, so there's a question that asks on the application, and there is a printout of the application here as well. You can't submit that to us because it all has to be done on Submittable, but there is a working Word doc of that downloadable on our website. It's the same one that you got here. So you can use that to work off of if you want to work offline and just type your answers there. Just don't do the multiple choice ones there because you can't carry that over. But if there are any long form questions, you can type them out in Word and then copy and paste. Okay, back to this. So there's a specific question on the application that asks how you will measure the success of your program. So we're looking for specifics about how you're gonna let us know how successful it was. That might be, if it's a program, having a volunteer walk around with a clipboard and ask, what's your zip code? How did you hear about this? That way you can see what your reach was, which parts of your marketing worked and were successful, and to try and figure out why they were successful, and those types of things. So. It's really important because you'll have to do an interim and final report to us. And so this is going to give you the information you need to give us that information so we can report back to the Ulster County Legislator and ask for more funding. Okay. Community need and benefit. So this is kind of going with the impact and the need of the new program or initiative in your community. So you're going to want to talk about these points, so how you've identified the need, how will it promote Ulster County, how will the residents of the community benefit from this, and does it reach a community that's otherwise underserved by the arts? Timeline, again, is going to be in list format, and you're going to be doing, putting any of the key events and any benchmarks that are in place to reach your final goal. Actually, yes, you're going to be asked for the mission statement as well, and if there's more than one organization in the project, you're going to want to give everyone's mission statement. And there's also a question asking for the history of the organization. So save that kind of information for those specific questions and leave it out of the ones that are asked that have to do with this specific grant request. These are the attachments that you're going to submit. So you're going to give us your organizational budget from your last year, the project budget, or a capacity building budget. Both of them were over there, so depending on which category you're applying to, you'll select which budget you're going to use. And I'll talk about the main difference between the two of them in a second. Give us any resumes for lead artists or consultants or new staff people, whatever it might be. List of your staff and board. We use those to check for nonprofit best practices, just, and some of that stuff is available to us otherwise, but we like to have it from the organization. And you'll attach that to submittable. You're going to give us proof of 501c3 status, an audit. This is required by New York State, so it's going to be an audit 990. And there are some guidelines on there about, depending on how big your organization is, exactly what kind of 990 or audit you need to submit. So you'll see that on the application. And then any images, brochures, letters of support, any other supplementals, we encourage you to attach those to the application as well. Okay, so the budget. I think everyone got a printout of the budget, and I'm going to go over it briefly, but if you need additional assistance on this, please reach out to us and we can do a one-on-one TA meeting about it. So let me grab a copy from the back also. Does anyone have any questions about the application or anything else I've said? Okay. Okay. So let's start with the project budget, because that one's a little bit more complicated. So at the top of the project budget, that's where you're putting in your income, and you'll see these descriptors on the right side. These are all of the types of income that we generally see come in. So they might be your box office, your membership dues, any tuition to participate in workshops, individual donations. So it's broken up into earned income and contributed income. There's also an in-kind section, so that's anything that's donated to the project, that's adding value to the project in some other way. And again, this is only for programmatic support, this project budget. Down below, project expenses, and then, so those are going to be any expenses associated with the project. This column in the middle, explanation column, this is where you're going to explain. So if you say box office, and then you put total income on the right at $1,000, you're going to want to say, $100, I'm trying to come up with an easy example, 100 tickets sold at $10 each, right? And you might write based on historical data, something like that to let us know where that number is coming from. Or if, say, you had an individual donation of $500, you could say 2 donations, $250 each, actual, like we already have it, or projected. So those kinds of things you want to be clear about, whether you already have the money or you're projecting that you anticipate getting, $500 in donations from, approximately 50 people, whatever it might be. So be clear about those kinds of things. And so then at the project expenses below, this might be, so a good example of this would be artist fees. So say, here you might write, in the explanation column, 5 artists at $100 each, and then the total expenses would be $500. Next to it, this column, grant request column, this is where you're telling us what you're asking us to pay for of your expenses. So say you're asking us to pay for all